Hello, welcome everyone to episode 9 of Parkinson's with Geoff. I know it's been a long time since I made the last podcast. I apologize for that. You're welcome to email my manager and complain. His email is parkinsonswithjeff@gmail.com, and I'm sure he will berate me accordingly, especially as my manager is me. So thanks for listening. Today I'll talk about my experiences with a recent vacation I was lucky enough to take to Thailand. And I will talk about it specifically with respect to what did I do right or wrong as it relates to traveling, especially that kind of distance with Parkinson's disease. My invisible travel buddy. First things first, the fact that I can still take a vacation solo, if I want, is a good thing, right? And right now, most people, as they see me going through the airport, would have no idea that I have Parkinson's, because that is where I am at in my condition at the moment. And that's where I intend to keep it. I'm doing everything I can to keep it there. My motor skills, as an example, are relatively unaffected at the moment. I do have some balance issues sometimes, primarily in my right leg. Sometimes it is to the point where I go through a few hours or maybe a day of needing to use a cane just in case. And also they're good for hitting people that get in your way. But other than that, I still go to the gym. I still do jiu-jitsu. And that has not got worse since my diagnosis 3 years ago now. And that's a good thing. It means that the things that I've been told to do by the various neurologists and all those kinds of people work. And that's key. You must do the work. You've got a role to play in keeping yourself in the best shape you possibly can. And that applies whether you have Parkinson's or not. You need to exercise. I've been slacking off on that recently, and I see and feel the difference. Don't slack off. Sometimes you just don't have enough energy to go to the gym or whatever you do. I get that. But get back there as soon as you possibly can. If you don't, you'll pay the price. And remember, if you have Parkinson's, it's not like before Parkinson's. It doesn't mean you can get back, work out hard for a month and a half, and be right back to where you were. You may not be able to get back to where you were. Okay, so keep that exercise regime up. And I must start following my own advice on that. But you may be at an advanced stage of bad motor effects from Parkinson's. And that will clearly define where you can or can't go on vacation. So if you are really having some motor skills with a lot of trembling, leg weakness, I got to be careful how I say that, leg weakness, things like that, then perhaps you should reconsider going into the Himalayas to get a bag of really natural Himalayan pink salt. It's probably not a good idea, and I don't know why we need pink salt from the Himalayas anyway. That's a different topic. But maybe think about things like that before you get over adventurous. Otherwise, you're not going to have a good time. But I want you to get out there and have a vacation. Everyone deserves a vacation. If you have the ability to afford it and travel, there's no reason why you can't. Unless your medical professional tells you otherwise. You may have other conditions. This is just about Parkinson's. And again, disclaimer, I am not a doctor. I'm just sharing my experience. So you've got to choose where you go very carefully. The distance of the flight or the drive is a factor that you have to think about, depending on where you're at in your Parkinson's journey. Again, for me, I'm fortunate. I don't have any restrictions at all. Certainly not self-imposed, and not given to me by any of my medical professionals either. But excuse me. The one thing I did notice on this trip, on the way back, was my legs. And I just mentioned earlier that sometimes I have balance problems, primarily on my right leg. One of the flights was about 15 hours long, and my legs were extremely painful by the end of that flight, and also they would not stop moving. I suppose it's very similar to restless leg syndrome. I'm not sure. I don't have that. But I haven't had that happen to me before. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I used to travel to Paris a lot, which is only a 6-hour flight from JFK. My legs would get fidgety on that flight, but not to the extent that I had on this flight. So just be aware, if you haven't flown for a while and you're going on a long trip, it may feel quite different to your last time that you flew. So just be aware of that. Don't assume it's exactly the same. If you are really motor impaired, you have to think about wheelchairs at the airport and all those kind of things, which nearly every airport has, and it's not a problem. But you just need to do things like that in advance. Make sure the airline is aware. If you have tight connections, like a lot of sites, if you like go to Expedia or something like that, they'll sell you flights where you have something crazy like a 45-minute connection. Well, if you land in terminal, well, hopefully you don't land inside the terminal, but if you get off your plane at Terminal A in Atlanta and you're going from Terminal E, which is the international terminal in Atlanta, and you've got 45 minutes, that's not going to work, especially if you need a wheelchair, something like that. That simply is not going to work. And honestly, they shouldn't sell an itinerary like that. It's got nothing to do with Parkinson's. They just shouldn't make the connection that tight. So to be mindful of what your capabilities are in moving around the airport if you are taking a plane. If you're driving yourself, having someone drive you, it's different. If you're on a train, it's different. If you're on a boat, things generally move slower on a boat. I have not been on a cruise. I don't intend to. I do not want to be trapped with 3,000 of my closest strangers on a boat. Thank you very much. And running out of toilet paper and all those things that you hear about on the news. No, thank you. And I'm sure they don't want to be trapped with me either. None of us would do well. So just be very careful about your planning. It's planning. A lot of this is planning, and again, a lot of this is common sense. It's got nothing to do with Parkinson's specifically. Do you have a travel partner that is a spouse and knows your condition well, or are you going with a friend that doesn't know you as well and doesn't know what your symptoms are or could be? For example, again, if you look at me walking down the street, you probably would not think that I have Parkinson's disease. But I do get fatigue attacks sometimes. And my condition primarily affects my cognition. I have days where, it's just going to be a slow day in my head. That's all there is to it. So if you're traveling with someone that doesn't know you that well, make sure that they know what your conditions are. So it's not a surprise to them. Make sure they're okay with being essentially your caregiver. Might be too strong of a word, but just make sure that they're ready to kick into action for you if they need to, and they're not surprised. Insurance, very important. If you're going somewhere and you need to get private medical insurance for that particular trip, you'll have to disclose that you have Parkinson's and perhaps you have other conditions, and you may not actually qualify for insurance, or you might qualify, but you'll be charged an absolute fortune for it. So just be very careful about that. And don't think about not disclosing it, because if something happens and you need to go to a hospital and you discover that, okay, they had a pre-existing condition they didn't disclose, could be anything. But if they can link it to whatever occurred to you overseas, they're going to use it as a way to get out of paying. So please be very, very mindful of that. And if you're going and you have coverage from either a government or a work plan, just make sure, make the phone call or send the email to the company and say, hey, I'm going, I have this condition, am I covered? Just make sure, okay? Medication. Do not forget to take your Parkinson's medication. Most people with Parkinson's, at the very least, are on a regime of carbidopa-levodopa. And some of us have other medications as well. And again, depending on your severity, and you may have other conditions too, you could potentially have quite a lot of medications. You really need to get that organized well in advance. Do you have enough for the whole trip and enough in your drawer for when you get back? Make sure you take enough for the trip plus an extra few days in case something happens and you get delayed or something like that. I'm a pilot, so I'm always thinking of backup plans and reserves. And when you're filing for a flight, we have to have a certain amount of fuel on board for the flight that we're doing, plus X% of or time of reserve. Think of it that way with your medications as well. Take with you your medication slips, not just the medication bottles. Okay, so whatever the pharmacist gives you when you get your medication that describes what it is, take those with you, especially if you are on something that's a controlled substance. Because if you come into a foreign country and you get selected for additional screening as you go through immigration and customs at the other end, they may want to know, well, what are these drug things that you're bringing? What are they? And if you say, well, that's my Parkinson's, and it just, for them, it could be anything. And even if it's in a bottle with your name on it and CVS pharmacy on there, that's good. That's better than nothing. But take the whole information packet with you, and that could be a lot of stuff. So you need to prepare for that. The other thing is, make sure you have your medications with you in your carry-on that you take on the plane. And if you weren't going to take anything on the plane, then you're going to need to take something on the plane, at least a backpack. And make sure you have enough for the flight, enough for any layovers. Do not put any of your medication in the baggage hold, unless you're going for an extended vacation. If you're going for a month, that's fine. Take enough for a couple of days in your carry-on. Maybe 3 days, because if they lose a bag, generally they'll get it to you within 3 days. I actually would say take a week. I've had a suitcase get lost, and Air France delivered it to me a week later, and the suitcase basically exploded on my front doorstep, but that's a different issue. So make sure that you have all of those things. Warning, checklists. You need to do in advance a checklist of what you should be taking. Okay. And again, this is something that really you should do for a trip, regardless of Parkinson's, but especially when it comes to Parkinson's. Why? Because pretty well all of us have some kind of memory impairment. My short term memory at the moment, I'm going through a phase where it is about as much use as a chocolate teapot. I just cannot remember where I put anything right now. So checklists in advance are important, but I did something really stupid. I wrote a good checklist. I wrote the meds down there, and I checked them off. But, and here comes the other thing, make sure you leave yourself plenty of time. I didn't. I had plenty of time to prepare for the trip, but I procrastinated, and then, the night before ordering the Uber for pickup, I had meds on my checklist. I put the meds in the bag, but I was moving pretty fast because I wanted to get to bed. I was getting a very early flight, and I forgot two of my meds. And then the first thing I had to do upon arrival in Thailand is go and get replacement meds for the two that I'd left behind. Now, fortunately, in Thailand, the medical system is phenomenal. And it was a Sunday, and within an hour and a half, I'd seen a neurologist, and they'd spoke perfect English, and they gave me a prescription, which they filled right there at the hospital, and I was done. And by the way, it was $90 from start to finish, and I've never seen such a clean hospital in my life. I digress. But you may not be so lucky, depending on where you're going. So make sure you do everything. When you say meds on your checklist, consider writing down all of the meds that you have. And for some of you, that might be a lot. That's going to be a pain in the backside, but it's worth it. And then check them off. And I've also done stupid things like put something in my hand to put in the bag, checked it off, then got distracted, walked off and put that thing down and come back and I completely forgot to put it in my bag. And I think that's what happened this time. So make sure you have your medications, all of them, and the prescription with you as well. Make sure you have on your checklist, of course, you're going to put your document checklist, your passport, any specific visa you might need, depending on where you're traveling. Anything else that's required, maybe you need an immunization certificate. It really depends on where you're going. Make sure, of course, you have that, and make sure you have that in your carry-on bag as well. There is a routine that I have that has saved my skin several times, because in my job I was traveling so many times a year. It was unbelievable, and I had to have a routine because I'd be going from continent to continent with one day in between back at the office. It's crazy. So that's enough to throw anyone off balance. So I had a little routine. I would put my passport in my right trouser pocket, wallet in the left, wire in the front pocket because of pickpockets. You got to be aware of that. Again, that's nothing to do with Parkinson's. That's just common sense. Phone and iPad, laptop, whatever you're taking, as well as, of course, your itinerary and your important paperwork. You need to know where that is at all times. You need to stop and check as you go through each checkpoint that you have everything back in your hand. It comes back to time. Leave yourself time to do that, because depending on where you're going, when you're coming through the airport of the country that you're leaving, you may have 3 independent checks. You'll have, first of all, security. Then you'll have passport control. And then there's another, depending on which country, there could be another control. And each one, you have to show your passport, your boarding pass. all those types of things. So make sure you have a system that allows you to do that. And don't be fumbling around in different pockets. As some of you have seen my Instagram video where it's a serious review, but I make fun of this ridiculous backpack that I have that's got about 500 different compartments in it. And there's absolutely no point in taking that because you'll never find. There's probably still things in there that I'll never see again, but they're in there. Don't take that. Go back to Instagram and look at the one. Don't buy that one. I did take a backpack on this trip, but it only had 2 or 3 compartments, and that's all you need. And you know these things that people hang around their neck with their documents and everything in there. And I'm going to pre-apologize to all of my, how should I say this politely? I'm definitely going to get emails about this, but that's all right. Those of you that are more chronologically experienced than others, let's put it that way, I'm very sorry. But when I saw you at the airport with the thing around your neck with the passport in it and your glasses and all that kind of stuff, I thought, I'm not doing that ever because that makes me look old, and I'm not old. So again, I apologize to anyone that might take offense to that. I'm going to recommend that you get one of those if you have Parkinson's. I'm probably going to get one. Because it's good for those documents that have to be taken out continuously during the airport, because that's where you're most likely going to lose your documents, is actually in the airport, because you have to show them to so many people so many times. And I don't know why. I don't know why they think I'm going to change identity, in like within 50 meters of the next checkpoint, but that's just the way it is. So those documents are going to be in and out all the time. You don't want them in your back pocket. Someone might steal them. They might fall out. You don't want them in your front pocket because if you lean over, something's going to fall out. You may not even notice. So maybe one of these things that I used to make fun of is you should consider. I'm thinking about it, but if I do get one, I'm going to have to put some kind of silly wording on there, like no, I'm not old, I just have a really bad memory, or something like that. I don't know, maybe we could have a merchandise line for Parkinson's with Geoff. I don't know. Actually, that's a pretty good idea. I've already forgotten about it. So please make sure you're ready for that. It's really important. I did an absolute classic on a trip to England last year. I had everything nicely organized. I did all my checks of my checks of my checks. And I went to the washroom next to the gate just before I boarded. And I knew that I'd just checked my passport and boarding pass and had it all and everything. So I was quite happy, relaxed, and went to get on board the airplane, and I don't have my boarding pass. Why? Well, because I didn't have my backpack at all. I left it all in the washroom. So I ran back, and fortunately it was still there. Thank goodness. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even been able to get on the plane, and I'd be replacing passports and everything. So please be careful. Again, common sense. Whether you have PD or not, this is common sense. But it's more important if you have PD. Your memory, your cognition, by default, they are impaired. If you don't leave yourself enough time, you're going to be putting yourself under unnecessary stress. When you're under unnecessary stress, you're going to forget things more easily. You're going to get flustered. You're going to get cranky if you're anything like me. And a lot of people will not travel with me anymore, but that's a different episode. So give yourself plenty of time. Plenty of time. Make sure you have plenty of sleep. You should be in a good sleep discipline anyway, but make sure you get plenty of sleep before the trip. Make sure that you drink plenty of water during the flight, especially if it's a long flight. Again, common sense. But even more important, when you have Parkinson's disease, you need to give the body what it's asking for. I suggest taking some of those little packets of stuff you put in water that has electrolytes in them, so that you can mix that with your water. And once you get through security, buy a couple of bottles of water, just in case you're on that plane a long time before service can start. If they hit turbulence as soon as they get in the air, you may not be able to get any water for an hour or so. And you should be keeping your medication schedule exactly as a doctor prescribed it. And that brings me to another point. Timing. If you're going to go across time zones and date lines, what do you do about medication? Here, there's no real specific advice. Even if you ask your neurologist, they're not going to be able to give you specifics. You've really got to look at the whole travel event in terms of what does that mean in terms of what I should be taking during that 24-hour period. You're going to have to kind of forget the local time of wherever you are, especially if you're at 40,000 feet over Alaska. Time doesn't really matter, and most likely you will not know the correct time unless you have a watch on that is not connected to Wi-Fi, and you just leave it in the time zone of your house, which is what I do. I never change my watch. The phones change themselves, but only when they get into a decent service area, and then they'll go to local time. But my watch, I never change. Then at the very least, I know what the time is at the house, and from there, I can calculate. Okay, I left the house at 3 o'clock this morning, and it's now 3 p.m. So I should have taken already this, and this. And you need to do that, and you need to look at your whole 24-hour period or more. If it might even be, some flights, depending on their itineraries and the number of stops, you may be on the road or in the air for 30 hours. So that's how you have to deal with that. And then when you get to where you're going, for the first day, use that same 24-hour approach, and then try to get onto the schedule of the time zone that you're actually in. So take your meds at breakfast time, which is 7 o'clock local time, even if it happens to be 6 p.m. at home. So that's how I deal with that. You may have a different idea, but that's how I deal with it. Of course, that assumes that you're not me and you haven't left two of the most critical ones back at your house safely next to your checklist. That's not overly effective. Depending on the amount of symptoms that you have, your age, your overall health, you may not be suitable for flying. You should check with your neurologist as well as your primary care whether or not they think it's a good idea for you. It may not be. So obviously you've got to do that in the planning stage. The other thing is, wherever you're going, make sure you have your support locations identified. Which hotel are you staying at, or which friend's house are you staying at? Where's the nearest emergency room? Where is the nearest place for getting any type of medical attention? Again, that applies whether you have Parkinson's or not. But where is the nearest place you could go to get some type of Parkinson's special treatment if you needed it? And do that all in advance. And again, if you're going into the Himalayas or on safari for 3 weeks, maybe you're physically capable of doing that, but I'm not sure it's the best idea, especially solo. But it doesn't mean that you can't. And again, you really need to, while you can, and Parkinson's is irrelevant. Go and travel. If you like traveling, go and do it while you can. If you have the means to do it, go and do it. World is changing at a very fast pace, so make sure that you go and see some of the places while you're in a condition to do so and while you're able to do so. I'm sure that geopolitics and things like that are going to be affecting many locations where people like to go. So don't miss out on the opportunity if you have it. That really is about it. I'm just looking at my list here. You can see I have my checklist. I will put a very short summary checklist that I use on the website, parkinsonswithgeoff.com. I'll do that before the end of this week, and you'll be able to download it. But again, you might need adult supervision to make sure that you're looking at the checklist and actually putting whatever it says into your bag with the checklist in your hand. You might need someone checking you while you're checking. Because my example of leaving 2 of my main medications behind is absolutely classic. Fortunately, it wasn't a problem. Other than that, there's no reason to be worried about going, and have fun. Just be mindful of where you're going. Make sure it's not an area where there's some conflict or violence or anything like that. And just go and have fun and enjoy. Keep your exercises going. Things like your Brain HQ, which is one of the apps that I use for just keeping my brain active. Make sure you still do your exercises. If you're doing speech therapy, you have exercises that you do at home. Keep doing them. Vacation is a vacation, but it's not an excuse to not do what you should be doing to keep yourself in the best possible shape from a Parkinson's standpoint. Yeah, you can take a couple of days off from the gym. Most hotels have gym. Do something. But these other ones, the brain training, speech training, if you've been advised to do that, anything that you've been told to do at home, you should still be doing on vacation. And that means you're going to have to plan your day accordingly when you're on vacation as well. And that means if you're traveling with someone or as part of a larger group, they're going to have to accommodate you and the time you need to do that. Don't feel bad about inconveniencing people. If you're traveling with them, they obviously know you and they know you have a condition, so they shouldn't be giving you a hard time. And if they are, fire them and go with someone else. But you just have to plan and be mindful of all of that. But there's no excuse for you not doing your exercises. Your home exercises, you keep doing them even if you're in a hotel. That's it from me. Thank you for listening. I will record another session in the future, obviously. I'm not going to do it in the past. But I won't put a time date on that right now because I am infamous for not sticking to it. Obviously, I will do my best to make it pretty soon. Let's just leave it at that. And have fun. Enjoy yourself. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. And I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening. Bye.